Iran's 14-point plan is generating significant speculation about a turning point in the Middle Eastern nuclear program. Some sources suggest Tehran has declared it will not pursue nuclear weapons and is willing to transfer uranium to Russia, a move that could alter the entire dynamic of tensions with the US and Israel. However, there has been no official confirmation to date. This indicates that the real battle now lies not only in military matters but also in diplomatic maneuvering, where every signal can determine the risk of war or the opportunity for de-escalation. Mr. Seyed Mohammad Marandi, what are your thoughts on this? Is this a sign that Iran is genuinely seeking a deal to avoid war, or is it merely a strategy to buy time and gain leverage in negotiations?
Yeah, this is all speculation. The Iranian position has not evolved. There may be changes in tactical changes, uh, or changing of wording, or prioritizing some things over another. But nothing has changed in the Iranian position. That and why should it? Are the Iranians demanding uh, the territory of neighboring countries? Are the Iranians demanding the United States give up its nuclear weapons? Iran is not demanding anything unreasonable. Iran is demanding reparations for all the kids that the Americans have murdered, that the Israelis have murdered, all the civilians that they've murdered, all the civilian infrastructure that they've murdered, that they've destroyed. What is strange about that? It's a war of aggression. It's an illegal war of aggression. The Strait of Hormuz, these are not international waters. It's a tiny waterway that belongs to Iran and Oman. And Iran is saying from now on, it's not going to be like before. You brought this upon yourselves. The Americans, Netanyahu, and Trump brought this upon the United States and the Israeli regime. Does Iran want the Strait of Hormuz closed? No, it's not Iran that's closed the Strait of Hormuz, it's the Americans. It's the United States on behalf of the Israeli regime that has done this. Iran wants the strait open. We had a ceasefire agreement, and in that ceasefire agreement, we were supposed to have a ceasefire in Lebanon and Gaza and across the board, and then we were supposed to allow the ships that were linked to those countries that helped the United States in the war to get to use the Strait of Hormuz. Otherwise, ships are passing. So, um, am I back? Okay, sorry. Uh, so the Iranians do not want the Strait of Hormuz closed, but the Iranians, ships, Russian ships, Chinese ships, Iraqi ships, ships from Oman, Iran, others go through, Indian and Pakistani ships. But the limitations are for those regimes that have been at war with Iran. And in the ceasefire agreement, Iran was going to allow many of those ships to go through. But the Americans and Netanyahu and Trump violated the ceasefire. He imposed a siege on Iran on the Strait of Hormuz, and Netanyahu continued with the slaughter in Lebanon. So they violated the ceasefire agreement that Trump agreed to. It wasn't Iran. So Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz is nothing extraordinary. Iran doesn't want U.S. forces to be able to rebuild bases in the Persian Gulf for obvious reasons. They've killed so many kids. So nothing in the 10-point Iranian plan is extraordinary. It's all normal. But for the empire, for any country to say we want our rights as a sovereign country, that's abnormal. For the empire, for Iran to say we are, you have to respect our sovereignty, they say no, we're not going to respect your sovereignty. We have rights as a country to have a peaceful nuclear program. They say no, you don't have any rights. You must give assurances that you'll never attack us again. No, we won't give you such assurances. That's the mentality of the empire, and that's why we're not seeing any real progress.
Tensions between Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, and Pakistan are creating a new layer of uncertainty in the Middle East, while Saudi Arabia and Qatar push for a non-aggression pact to protect regional stability and the Strait of Hormuz. Questions remain about Pakistan's military ties with Riyadh and its growing cooperation with Iran. Could Pakistan become a bridge for diplomacy?
No, it's not going to make any difference to Iran. Iran's relationship with Pakistan is very good. The Pakistani population is with Iran. The polls show that in Pakistan, Iran's popularity is through the roof. And that's during the time when Iran was bombing U.S. targets and, uh, and, and, and targets affiliated to the United States or to the subordinates of the United States across the Persian Gulf region. People know what's going on. And Iran did not start the war. Iran did not initiate any escalation. As we speak, Iran right now can carry out assaults, major assaults, but it doesn't do so because it doesn't want to initiate war. That's not in it for Iran. It's not a moral. It's an immoral position, contrary to in the West. Iran has moral values. That's why Iran is opposed to the genocide in Gaza. That's why it's opposed to the Holocaust, the ongoing Holocaust, and that's why the West supports the ongoing Holocaust because they don't have moral values. The Western leads the regimes, and the Iranians do have moral values. So Iran is not going to initiate any war against any of its neighbors. But if the United States attacks Iran, those countries that host U.S. bases, those countries that facilitate U.S. strikes, they are part of that war, just like during the 39 days. There's no escape. And there's nothing, I mean, the Americans couldn't defeat Iran. No one else can defeat Iran.
General Keith Kellogg stated that the only solution for the United States was to occupy Kharkiv and the surrounding islands. Mr. Seyed Marandi, what is Iran's air defense capability over Kharkiv? Is Iran capable of defending these islands?
Nima, the Iranians want the United States to take some of these territories. They want them to come in. That's where the war starts. They're not going to keep them out. They want their forces to come on Iranian territory. And then those capabilities that Iran has hidden for decades and has been preparing for decades against the Americans, they'll begin using them. They'll begin striking the American troops. They'll begin to hammer them, counter strikes, whether it's on islands or whether it's on the mainland. They'll just they'll make them miserable. Ultimately, the Americans are going to have to leave. We discussed this at the very beginning of the war, almost at the beginning. I don't know when was our first conversation after the war began. I said that the Americans want this to be a short war, and the Iranians want this to be a long war. Remember, during the 39 days of fighting initially, the Americans, they uh, said unconditional surrender. They thought it'd be over in a couple of days. Many of Iran's friends thought it would be over in a few days. The Iranians were planning this for decades. The Iranians were planning for a long war. So after a few days, when the Americans saw things were going downhill, they kept sending messages. The Iranians ignored them until Trump accepted the Iranian 10-point plan, which was a humiliation for him. And people attacked him, and then ultimately his folks went and said, no, we threw it in the bin. But he accepted it. He tweeted it. So then came the ceasefire. The longer it lasts, Trump is bringing down the global economy. Time is not on his side. So if they carry out an assault, let them take the island. Like, what difference does it make to us? There'll probably be some defenses. Then they'll allow them to take territory over wherever. I don't know the military plans, but the plan is to fight them on the ground, not to prevent them from getting there. The Americans can bomb a few places, take territory, but then they have to keep that territory. In the counterattacks that can last weeks and months, then the Americans will have to stay. Because if they leave, they're humiliated. So they have to stay, so the Iranians can keep hitting them and hitting them and hitting them and hitting them. So, I mean, these generals or former generals of the United States, they are fools. But these are political appointees, as you know. To become a general in the United States, you have to you have to be obedient to the military-industrial complex. Why? Because after they retire, they want to get on the board of all these different companies and make their millions. they've lived in a general with their entourage and so on, and then when they retire, they have nothing. So they want to be a part of something big, so that they can keep that lifestyle. They're not like Iranian generals. Iranian generals, they're like us. They're on the front line. It's a different world. It's a different mentality. They're the first to put their lives on the line. So, it's a completely different world. So he can talk this way. Yeah, fine. That's exactly what the Iranians want. Not that the Iranians want war. No one should be mistaken. Because many people think, in the West, they say the Shia Muslims have a, what they call it? Something like uh, martyrdom complex or something silly like that. No, they're prepared for martyrdom. But why? Because for the right cause, if you sacrifice your life, you're a martyr. And what is the right cause? It is supporting the children of Gaza. What is the right cause? Supporting the people of Cuba. What is the right cause? Opposing racism in Southern Africa. That's the causes that that's why they hate Iran. So if it's a cause to defend the country against an aggressor that supports ethno-supremacism and racism and ethnic cleansing and the extermination of children in Lebanon and Gaza, then it's the right cause. So the Iranians want to make this a long war to punish the aggressor and to make sure that it never happens again. Iran wants to make sure when this war is over, the United States government never, ever thinks about attacking our country again. So we want this war to be longer in Iran so that in future we don't have to fight another war. And these people are prepared to give their lives, to make sacrifices, because this is the right cause, to end aggression and to support these people. Again, it goes beyond their comprehension, because in their narrative, I said before, and I've said this on many shows, I've been promoting Flint and Hilary Leverett's book, Going to Tehran. If people read that book or read um, Alistair Crook's book, Resistance, even though it's a somewhat old book and things have changed, I think they get a better understanding of this movement, of the resistance, of the axis of resistance, and what this all means. Instead of believing the silly narratives of the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Guardian or the Times or France 24, they should just ignore those. And if they read these and if they read other material, I mean, there's another good book by Peter Oborn on the nuclear program. Uh, I forgot the name, but in any case, if people read, they'd see that actually the Iranians are very, very logical, very, very reasonable, and that ideologically speaking, they're very, it's all coherent, it all makes sense, but they've been taught for all these decades to see Iran as irrational, crazy, dangerous, and of course, who's been promoting the Epstein class and their proxies in the region, the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Qataris and their NATO allies and all that. But people are seeing through that. So in any case, the Iranians are uh, the Iranians want the Americans to take islands. They want the Americans to take territory on the mainland. That's what they want. They want them to carry out these operations so that they can give them the real punishment, because that will be much more painful for them ultimately than Iran's missiles and drones.
Mr. Seyed Marandi, what do you think of those who believe Iran's proposal is too much for Donald Trump to handle? And because part of what Iran is demanding relates to sanctions, massive sanctions that have lasted far too long, it's not just in the hands of the Trump administration. They have to cooperate with Congress. The big question now is, does Donald Trump really have enough power to meet Iran's demands for sanctions lifting, when that depends on Congress and the entire American system of power?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that it just shows that Iran doesn't need the United States. The United States if they don't want a peace agreement with Iran and they say they can't do it, then we move on. We're not going anywhere. Let them fight the war. We're prepared. They want to attack tonight? We're prepared. They want to attack tomorrow night? We're prepared. We're not afraid. Our cause is just, where no one took a stand. Iran took a stand for Palestine, for Gaza. Our cause is just. We're protecting our sovereignty. We never initiated a war. This is the second war that the United States has launched against us in less than a year. If they can't deliver, then why should that's not our problem. They want us to give up our sovereignty and say we won't have a peaceful nuclear program because they say so, and then we can't demand that these unjust sanctions against ordinary Iranians be removed because they don't have the political capital to do it. That's not our problem. That's their problem. Again, Iran is not an ordinary country. And the United States has to come to terms with that. It can't come to terms with it. And that logic that you use indicates that we're not going to appease Trump. If there's going to be peace, then there has to be peace. That means all of our assets have to be released. That means the sanctions that target women and children, and that's what they do. Obama, Biden, Trump, Bush, all of them targeted ordinary Iranians. It's been normalized in the West because for them, human life doesn't matter. You see all these Western journalists in Beirut. As we speak, the Israelis target medics in Lebanon. They find them, they hunt them down to kill them. You would think that this would be like the number one news story in the world. Israeli, you don't even hear about it. Why? Because it's normal for them. Genocide, slaughter, death, sanctions, strangling Cuba, strangling Cuban children, preventing them from having a normal life. It's all normal. We're not going to accept that. And so if they can't deliver, then we won't have a peace agreement.
As we know, Israel is attacking Lebanon and many other areas. Israel's intention is to seize all of southern Lebanon, and no one in the US is opposing this action by Israel. They are turning a blind eye to Israel's brutality.
Well, the government in Lebanon is not a government. It's a puppet regime of the United States. But have no doubt that there will be under no circumstances will we have a ceasefire agreement. Forget the peace agreement. Will we have a ceasefire agreement without Lebanon included? That's we are already seeing that. So if the lifting the siege on Iranian ports comes along with ending the war in Lebanon and the slaughter in Gaza, it comes with that, and it will not be separated. Second, every single building in Lebanon will be rebuilt, and those who assisted the enemy will pay. We'll see. Every single building will be built. So Israel will be expelled from Lebanon, and all those uh, uh, towns and villages that were flattened, they're going to be built better than before. And then the Israeli regime will have to wonder what this was all about. All this slaughter, the only thing that will remain for them is that the world despises them, and they're going to have increasing internal problems because of their failure. But Iran, under no circumstances, will separate these files from one another. It's not happening.
According to him, if war were to break out again, would Yemen be willing to help Iran?
My understanding is this time things are going to be very different. And Yemen is very prepared. The resistance in Iraq is going to be very different. This will be the decisive war. So the Americans will probably do everything it can, and the resistance will show them what they can do.
Professor Marandi, do you know anything about the internet cables that run across the Strait of Hormuz? Because there are some reports that Iran is making some changes related to this issue.
Yes, there are these discussions, and everything is possible. Look, Nima, when they murder leaders and they slaughter kids and they bomb hospitals and they target medics and they bomb universities, they cannot complain about law and international law anymore. That's finished. So Iran will do what it deems to be in its interests, in the interest of the resistance, in the interest of the Palestinians and the Lebanese and Iran's allies and the Iranian people. So when they tear down international law, when they rip it up, they should have been thinking about it back then. So Iran will do whatever it deems necessary, whether it's with regards to internet cables, whether it's regards to ships, whether it's up. The Americans, the Europeans, they cannot. The problem that they have in the West, these Western elites, is that they want international law for themselves, but not for us. I remember speaking to this BBC journalist. She was really during the war, and when the Iranians first announced that they're going to control the Strait of Hormuz, she said, "This is against international law." And I said, you do know that war is being waged against Iran as we speak. First of all, it's not against international law. But what is international law exactly? You just murdered our leader. You just murdered all these kids. Your alliance. So she was really angry about insisting that why is Iran doing this? This is wrong. What? It's okay for you to kidnap presidents. It's okay for you to bomb fishermen or boats and kill hundreds of people in the Caribbean. It's okay for you to strangle 10 million people in Cuba. It's okay for you to destroy Syria with ISIS and Al Qaeda and the uh, the monstrous Caesar sanctions. It's okay for you to destroy Libya, and the list goes on. It's a never-ending list. Look at Afghanistan. After all the decades of dirty war there and occupation, it's a country, a broken country. The Americans, they were there for 20 years. What they didn't do anything for the country. All they did was basically increase the production of drugs 20, 30 fold. And of course, the Emirates was the means through which the drug money went back and forth. But in any case, yes, those cables, like everything else, if necessary, the Iranians will deal with them in whatever way they think is necessary in order to bring an end to aggression.
Thank you, Seyed Mohammad Marandi, for participating in today's excellent interview. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe Iran is signaling greater flexibility on the uranium issue and nuclear negotiations, but Tehran's true intentions remain difficult to discern. This is no longer just a nuclear issue, but a geopolitical struggle between the US, Russia, and Iran. If uranium is indeed transferred to Russia, it could alter the entire tension in the Middle East. In your opinion, is this genuine diplomacy or merely a negotiating strategy? Please share your perspective.